as already said, I show basically like talking around two lines. The one thing which I maybe better start now is basically mostly related to this building, which is called Pavilion at the Volksbühne. I make a bigger. You see that whole, like part of the square in Berlin, it's called Rosa-Luxemburg-Platz, and on the left-hand side you see this big, huge building. It's the Volksbühne, a kind of quite well-known East Berlin theater place. And they had this building you see in the middle. There's a small, this kind of glass box. It's called Glass Pavilion, and I was asked to do some shows there some years ago. So I had this, I liked this idea of like working with a completely nothing space, with a place without budget. And so I thought actually the best thing, since it's a glass box, it should be a kind of gallery, but actually without gallerist. So I just did the openings there and asked the artists to do works which can be very clearly visible from outside, so no gallerist has to sit there and open the door. And so when I came there to the building, and the other thing was, of course, I could only invite artists I kind of know privately, or I have a kind of bit personal relation to give them this, because you cannot ask an artist to make exhibition in a place, and if they ask for like having a print or something like a video beamer borrowed, I wouldn't have it. And so I was fortunate enough to have worked once for Isa Gensken and kind of knew her quite well. And I remember that Isa Gensken had done this very some works. She was interested often with kind of architecture in this earlier time. What Isa Gensken decided was to put this kind of bamboo forest on top of it. So the first show was actually when people came into the opening. They were standing downstairs in this glass pavilion but could not see the art, and it was an ice cold winter day, so it was actually very nice that the art was kind of above them, and actually quite a good idea from Isa Gensken. And so my idea was actually to have a gallery which is kind of empty in many senses. It just presents some sculptures. That was in the beginning, the first year, very nice. It was like my personal fantasy to, like, from cleaning the windows, writing the press text, going to the print store, writing the emails, sending the photos and so on, to do all myself. And since that was after 2 years not quite difficult already, I kind of thought after 4 years it is kind of enough. Why I did it longer was actually a kind of very practical one for me, because I think this relation to work with artists was something which kind of gave me actually personally a kind of new positive idea about art production, because for some reasons, for some years, the years before, I had often a kind of, I did myself actually, I kind of almost stopped. I don't want to make like a big mythos out of it, but I almost stopped kind of producing myself art, and I was actually looking for other kind of motifs of doing something, for example, like making this kind of experimental gallery or whatever. It's not very experimental in that what it showed, but it was a bit experimental in the sense that it was often difficult to swallow for some people in Berlin who have a kind of very categorical kind of idea of art spaces, and so there's usually a very strong definition. What is an alternative art space, for example, or what is a commercial gallery? I want just to say that there was often discussions around this gallery in Berlin was this kind of, yeah, but now you have to be careful. If you go to an art fair, you become commercial and you cannot work for the market and so on. And I think actually in many ways it's a problematic argument, because I actually put a lot of work in it and I never made money with that. It cost me money. And in the last year it was so amazing much work or something, and that I never get money for it. And have to say always, no, I don't go to the market, seemed to me sometimes like a little bit problematic problem because it serves only a few categories. At the same time, there was this kind of, I experienced very often that people who come more from the so-called market, commercial art world kind of talk to me in a way that I should be very careful to not get too alternative or something. I had the experience that when I came to New York, for example, or when I met people from New York at the art fair, that actually people liked very much, for example, that that they found out that I work as an artist at the same time I have a gallery, at the same time I work as a writer or something, while usually in many, not all, but many people in Germany, I was put in a defending position, like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm writing too, and actually I'm sorry, I'm an artist too, or like something like that, and actually this kind of portraying oneself as a person who does these different things. I felt this in some milieus outside of Germany, obviously at the moment advantage. It's a kind of something people like. Anyway, it was a great time, and here I show this. Then at the end I was asked by the Volksbühne, I told them that I slowly want to finish that, and so at the end I did this kind of, they asked me to do in the Volksbühne a kind of big evening as a goodbye to Galerie Meerrettich, and so I did, I had the stage, and so I did a big performance night. Yeah, the other things some years ago I started, like, I was sometimes writing for art magazines, for Text Kunst a few times, and for catalogs. I wrote texts about exhibitions or architecture, and so it was a kind of certain way of writing, of a kind of very informational mode of writing. And once, when I had to write an article for a catalog, I was talking with an artist, Josef Strau, about kind of photography, and we talked about this kind of famous series of Roland Barthes about photography, and she invited me to write about that a text for her catalog she did, and the deadline was coming closer and closer, and on the day before I did this thing, I had to send it. I still was like in the middle of thousands of notes, and it was no article at all, and so under this pressure, I decided something funny or something for me. I decided, okay, I kind of have to write a text, and so obviously there is some block or impossibility to do that. And so I decided just to kind of relax or something, to write about anything or something, to kind of write quickly about what happens to me at the moment, or what is the situation now or something. And so I just started writing about the night before, which was a Christmas party night or something. And so I kind of quickly wrote about this Christmas night. And there was a kind of narrative in the text which had a little bit to do with this photo text. And so I took little parts out of the text and mixed it, this kind of party description, and I mixed it with this photo text. And so the other thing was that the text was actually, in terms of grammar and so on, it didn't need to be very lectured. The grammar was actually very perfect and so. And so the other thing was that people, when I sent the text away and it was printed, people reacted very strong to the text, which actually never happened to me before. Like, I mean, of course, people discuss sometimes, yeah, you can say this and so on. But in the case of this text, there was I had the feeling that is a kind of mode of writing, that the mode of writing itself was already something which made people discuss writing in a general way. And that was a very interesting thing. So I decided actually to continue this kind of mode of writing, what I for a long time called automatic writing. So I did that in the years of Meerrettich, besides that, and actually it became for me a kind of a thing that's like actually only then important that a friend of mine, or like Jakob Fabricius from Copenhagen. He has a little, he publishes books, he makes exhibitions, he's curator, he had a bookshop and so on, and he had things. And he asked me, not knowing about my writing thing, but he said he makes these little kind of booklets, and if I would like to publish one with a text of mine, and actually would like if it would be not a theory text, but more kind of maybe self-referential or personal text, or maybe more literary text in terms of short stories. And so that was really great because I had already in the computer a bit of stories like that. And so I made this first booklet, first story. It was called White Nights. And then in short later, Daniel Buchholz saw this and he wanted to invite me for a group show he did. It was called Müllberg. And he said it would be very nice if I would like to make a booklet like that again, and like it would fit very well into the exhibition that I as an artist do. Instead of a kind of art object, I do this kind of little booklet. And so I made a second one, and so it is a kind of continuation, that it's a kind of fictional story where the main character remains the same actually. And so I made then for another exhibition another one, and so it became actually 4 of these. This kind of actually same serial novel, and so I started being interested in this phenomenon of the writing. And actually with the Daniel Buchholz exhibition, I was thinking it's actually impossible thing to write a text like that and then to transform it into art space. How can I do this practice, which is in some ways I felt actually a kind of artistic practice. Writing these texts, but how can I transform it into this kind of world of exhibitions where I have worked so many years now, because of course one could just like publish them and that's it or something, but I was interested how to transform that. And so I show you just one of a few examples. And so this is an exhibition at Daniel Buchholz at the moment. It opened 2 weeks ago. And you see here this table, and on this table you can hardly see, but there are like 6 different A2 posters, A2 size posters. And these posters are, on each poster you find 2 or 3 different texts. So for example, like here. So this is like the post. This is like one text, and here this is or like here. So this is like a post, and so here there are like 3 different stories, kind of in this way written, as I said, automatic kind of writing, most of them. The other thing was that I worked on kind of making referential objects to certain moments within the narrative. Yeah. So this was the exhibition at Green Naftali Gallery. And it was a bit that each of these lamps had a certain text related. So it could be either of like this little thing here, or like different flyers or something. Some of them had a kind of small loudspeakers with an MP3 player, with a computer voice telling this text. I used these lamps as kind of actors of these texts, and so in some ways the lamps had as well a kind of they were actually these kind of free market lamps, and but they kind of through little transformations they got like this whole thing became like a stage situation, that these are like actors or like figures who have kind of certain characteristics and sometimes certain little objects which had reference to the text. But I wanted somehow to build a kind of economic model around it as well, because I wanted to take it serious. It's only serious if you can get money for something in some ways. It's always the point where a certain production gets real or something. And so I try to make this economy that you can get into a gallery and can get my text like for free, or maybe for €1 or 5 if it's very expensive. But mostly now as posters for free and carried away, and like the show continues, you can read it at home, or the visitor can read it at home. So actually the visual thing of the show, the moment while he's in the exhibition, is just like a little part, but it continues later when he continues reading that, or she. And so the lamp is just more like the text is kind of free-floating, non-economic kind of thing, but it is kind of sponsored by these lamps, which of course by kind of slightly changed by me, by like painted white with white art, for example, that this cheap lamp from the flea market in the art space becomes gets another value, and so with this value I can kind of sponsor the practice of the writing.